Hi, I'm Daryl Rainey from Progressive Realty Group here in Waterford. This large white building in downtown Waterford was initially built for the Dominion Telephone Company, but over the years it's been home to a multitude of different industries and businesses. My brother Dean even rented space here in the 1990s for his sports card and collectibles shop, The Draft. In this edition of Building History, our pal James from the Waterford Heritage and Agricultural Museum explains the backstory of this important building in the heart of downtown Waterford.
The Dominion building came to be thanks to that newfangled invention, the telephone. In short order, Waterford had the first telephones in public buildings and in private residences, and that was a huge advancement for communications. Of course, before that it was the telegraph. But that caught the attention of some investors and some local interest to try to capitalize on the economic and industrial part of bringing in a company that might be interested in building telephones. And that happened through the Swiss-American Telephone Manufacturing Company, which was a Chicago-based company. That became what we now know as the Dominion Building. There was lobbying and there was some community, townsfolk resistance to that. It was going to cost a lot of money. Of course, people didn't like the idea of taxpayers' money going into a private enterprise. But the Waterford Star had lots of articles, and the publisher of the paper, Percy George Pierce, was very much in favor of having this business come in and kind of changed the tune of the community, and also town council gave them tax breaks and also floated them a loan to start production in Waterford. They started construction of the building in 1908. By 1909 they were in full production. The building itself is 100,000 square feet, 2 stories. It's a big building. You might not necessarily think so when you drive by it today, but a big industrial building, which of course was required because the company had named themselves the Dominion Telephone Company, with the patriotic flair for Canada and the Great Dominion. But that building needed to be of such a size because they virtually made every component that went into the telephone. And in the first couple of years, they became the 3rd largest manufacturer of telephones in all of North America. So it turned into a huge enterprise. And of course, it was favorable, that location, because it's right next to the railroad. Big opportunity for product coming in and product going out. So that was a huge bonus for that company. By 1915, they had pretty much ceased operations. And then a year later, the parent company in Chicago actually declared bankruptcy. So that was the end of the Dominion Telephone Company. There was a 2-year period where the building was empty, but in those 2 years, the young Dodge brothers actually got wind of the building and its location to the railroad and the industrial strength that was happening in the area, and thought that it might be a good location for auto manufacturing. Fortunately or unfortunately, town council decided that probably wouldn't be the best thing, so the Dodge brothers were turned away. And in 1917, Penman's Mill Company, based out of Paris, Ontario, purchased and set up shop there as a knitting mill. When Penman's took over and started manufacturing, they already had mills in Brantford, Port Dover, and also some mills in Quebec. But their main use of the building was to make knitted undergarments. The local stories that comes out of that is the Bobbin Boys. So there was a bunch of high school students, boys that were hired, and that was the nickname that they were given, and they were responsible for changing the bobbins on the machines, which of course was dangerous. These are big mechanical machines with lots of moving parts, so you had to really kind of keep your eye on what you were doing, or you'd miss a finger or a hand or that kind of fun stuff. So anything to make a nickel or two. And of course they were spending it on the gumballs, because that was one of the first things to come into Waterford and Norfolk for a treat, the newly invented gum, and it was quickly outlawed because of course that's such a disgusting habit to have. The Welcome Arch for Waterford is actually located right on the corner of Alice Street and the end of the Dominion building. And that was put up in 1925 as a tribute to Alice York, the wife of Colonel York, who was the local druggist. And that arch was dedicated after her passing. Alice came from a fairly wealthy family, the Sovereign family, and that whole end of Alice Street was actually owned by her family. So the big welcome arch, which was quite the thing to have in town for all the people arriving on the train, was in her honor and dedicated by the colonel and the townsfolk. The demise of the arch is still an unknown because we found absolutely no records on when it came down. We have pictures until the late 1940s. In talking with residents who have been in the village for quite a while, they have memories of it as a child, but we've kind of think that it was early 1950s that was the end of it. Not necessarily because of its structural stability or anything, but more likely because of the need for widening the road. Penman's Mill Company went through a few different changes of what they were making, but the company admitted that they had been losing money for years but had kept in operation, and there was about 65 employees there at the end. But yeah, finally closed down in 65. But in short order, it was taken over by another mill company and then eventually bought a few years later in the early 1970s by the Waterford Spinning Company. In 1988, there was a manufacturer of carpets that went in that exclusively made carpets for high-end restaurants and Canadian embassies. But by 1989, that had also ceased operation. The building didn't sit vacant for all that long. In the early 1980s, it was bought by a local business person with the idea of gutting it and turning it into almost a mall-type atmosphere. So you would go in and there would be various vendors inside. So all of the machinery, all of that equipment was taken out, and it became an empty warehouse of sorts with the idea of putting these stalls in for retail sale. So in the early 1990s, there was really only one business that went into the building, and that was called the Draft Sports Card and Collectibles. I understand because of the atmosphere of the building and the need for heat in the winter, proper heating anyway, that kind of shut that down, and they moved to a different location in Waterford. And then that was the end for a number of years for what was happening in that building. And on the premises of that site, there's another building that's not necessarily attached, but it was definitely part of the original component of that telephone manufacturing company. And for a while, there were two different businesses in there. In the front, Townsend Treasures moved in, so it was a tea house with antiques. And then also the Board and Batten, which was tied to the owners at the time, had a retail outlet and some storage in the back of that building as well. The owner did have ideas about putting lofts upstairs in that building, some big open space lofts, great use of the facility. One of the sad parts of the story with the loft situation was that permits weren't acquired, and there was some things that happened between the municipality and the owners that went back and forth, and a court case and some jail time, and that became the end of the owner's involvement with the building. There was a power of sale, and the front half had been purchased by a developer, and the back half had been purchased by the owners of the antique store at that time. And in short order, they had also opened the upstairs for vendors to be selling antiques. So it became quite a large facility for antiques, and also a destination for folks treasure hunting. The building today, of course, still houses the Waterford Antique Market. They've celebrated their 25th anniversary. The front half has been purchased, and it has now lofts officially upstairs with tenants.
So how did we come to own the building? It's interesting actually because we as a company focus in the Norfolk County area, and in the beginning phase, 2019 is when we started. We were looking to establish ourselves in smaller communities. Waterford wasn't really on our radar, but we noticed there was a building up for sale on Kijiji. And at the time we went to look, and we met with a gentleman named Murray Gibbons who owned the building, and he gave us a tour. And at the time when we walked through this building, it was basically an empty shell with units upstairs in really bad shape. And a lot of the infrastructure in place would have to be redone, gutted. So we decided at the time, let's take this project on. When we took ownership of the building, then we moved forward with basically taking it in stages. What that meant was we would remove all the brick and just gut it down to the studs, basically. The interesting thing is when we gutted the building, the things we found in here. There was an old elevator at the back of the building. So we left some of that infrastructure in place, the lift and things, adapted it into the design of the units. So who's in the units today? Well, on the commercial space, it's still Wishbone Brewery. And now we have a company called Groundswell, which is owned by Jess. On the residential side, we have one 2-bedroom unit, and then the remainder are all 1-bedroom units. They range in size from about 540 square feet to upwards of 1,800 square feet for a 1-bedroom unit. It's quite large. We tend to find that Waterford is a very desirable area for people. We don't have any challenges with finding individuals who want to call this home. In fact, we have a lot of people reach out to us constantly looking for availability.
Although this building has been split into multiple properties with different owners, it's still a hub of innovation and entrepreneurship today. And with its convenient location right next to the Waterford ponds and trails, this grand building has become a focal point of Waterford's commercial district. If you're looking to move in and around the Waterford area, be sure to contact us at progressiverealtygroup.ca, your hometown realtor.